My name's Nathan Hale, and I've always believed a man's worth was measured not by what he said at the table, but how he carried himself when no one was watching. I'm 42 now, divorced, the kind of divorced where even the paperwork feels like it flinched when it saw the truth. But I wasn't always this version of myself. For years ago, I was still married to Delilah. Tall, stunning, ruthless in heels, Delilah had ambition that walked into a room 5 seconds before she did. We met young, got married when we still thought loyalty was the same thing as love. She worked her way up the corporate ladder like it was built just for her. I ran a small construction business, houses, decks, barns. Work with splinters and sunburns, the kind that lasts. She said she loved that about me once. Said I was salt of the earth. Turns out she meant it the way people talk about dirt. Useful, but not for display. It was her idea to go to the party. Of course it was. Amanda's throwing a little thing, she said, already zipping up a dress that cost more than my first truck. Just a few people from work. Don't be late, and wear that navy shirt I like. You know, the one that hides your shoulders. Amanda was Delilah's old college roommate and newly divorced heiress of some tech fortune. She'd married into money, suited out of him, and was now the queen bee of Westlake Hill. Her place was the kind of mansion that made you whisper, even if you weren't religious. Big stone columns, glass staircase, hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce. People with cheekbones sharp enough to open mail and smiles so tight they looked painful. Delilah was radiant, I'll give her that. Dressed to kill and already sipping champagne by the time I parked the truck down the hill, far away from the sea of black Teslas and imported sedans. I walked into that house like a man stepping into someone else's dream. Or maybe someone else's trap. I don't belong in rooms like that. I know it. I'm not ashamed of it. I can wire a house from scratch, tell you exactly what's wrong with your foundation just by listening to it creak. But at that party, I was furniture. Worse, I was the worn-out bar stool that doesn't match the rest of the set. Delilah laughed a lot that night. Not with me, at me. I caught her mimicking my boots to a group of young associates, pantomiming a slow, lumbering walk like I was some cartoon hillbilly. They roared. I smiled. Not because I liked it, but because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. She was drunk. Or maybe just drunk on the attention. Either way, by the time we made it out the door, I was already driving home in silence. Only I wasn't the one behind the wheel. We were halfway down a dark stretch of County Route 9. No lights, no houses, just fields stretching forever on both sides. That's when Amanda leaned forward from the passenger seat and said, "Wouldn't it be wild if we just left him out here?" Her laugh came first, like a match strike. Delilah joined in, tipsy and gleaming in the dashboard light. "Yeah," she said, glancing back at me. "Let's see what happens if we leave him. Just for fun." The car slowed. My heart didn't. I waited for the joke to pass, for the giggles to give way to reason. But then the door opened, and Amanda was grinning as she said, "Come on, Nate. We're just playing. Let's see if you can survive without GPS and lumberjack instincts." I didn't say a word. I stepped out onto the shoulder. Gravel crunched under my boots. And then the door shut. The car pulled away. Taillight shrinking like a bad memory, swallowed by the dark. There I was. 40 minutes from home, no phone, no flashlight, standing on a 2-lane road in a nice shirt and worn jeans, the night air already settling around me like a shroud. They didn't know it yet, but they had just done something irreversible. They didn't leave a man behind. They left the wrong man behind. I stood there for a long time after the red glow of the taillights vanished into the distance. A breeze moved across the fields like it was trying to decide whether to carry a storm or just watch me suffer. Crickets chirped. A lone coyote howled somewhere far off. Nothing romantic about it. No epiphany. Just me and the road. I waited. First 15 minutes, I figured she was trying to prove some sort of point. One of those twisted little games she'd picked up from her office culture, push until the other person cracks, then pretend it was all a misunderstanding. The kind of thing people like Amanda laugh about over espresso martinis. 30 minutes in, I was still waiting, but my hands were in my pockets now, not from cold, just trying to hold back the rising knowledge that no one was coming back. An hour passed. Then 2. Still no car. No call. No text. Nothing. At some point, I stopped looking down the road. I just started walking. It was instinct more than anything. When something breaks down in the woods, you move toward the nearest sound of life. Water, voices, light. I headed west. I wasn't thinking of revenge or philosophy or anything grand. I was thinking about how far it might be to the next town and how stupid I'd been. She left me. On the side of a road. As a joke. I thought about our wedding day, her father giving me that stiff handshake like he was handing off a job interview. I thought about the nights I stayed up building her that deck she wanted so she could sip wine under the stars. I thought about the way she used to press her forehead against mine and say, "Don't ever disappear on me." I guess she just didn't think I'd take it literally. By the time I saw the glowing sign for a 24-hour diner, the sky was bleeding pink along the horizon. Birds were waking up. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. But I wasn't tired. I was clear. The waitress didn't ask questions. Bless her for that. Just poured the coffee and gave me a look that said she'd seen worse. I sat there with that chipped white mug between my hands, watching steam rise like smoke from a slow fire. Somewhere out there, Delilah was probably asleep in her overpriced silk sheets, dreaming of promotion parties and Instagram likes. Maybe she'd tell people it was just a harmless prank, that I overreacted, that I was too sensitive. Let her. Because as I sat in that booth, staring out the window at a world that suddenly looked a lot simpler, I made a decision. I wasn't going back. Not to her. Not to the house. Not to the life I'd spent a decade patching up with love and duct tape. I was done being her reliable fallback. Her steady placeholder. Her safety net. No more Nate the good husband. I paid in cash. Left a generous tip. By noon, I ditched my phone into a storm drain. I walked into a barber shop and asked for a cut that didn't look like me. Bought clothes from a thrift store. A backpack. A burner wallet with prepaid cards. Started using an alias I'd once joked about in college, Sam Whitaker. Had a nice ring to it. That night, I checked into a roadside motel under my new name. Paper-thin walls. Cigarette burns on the nightstand. The kind of place people don't ask questions. Perfect. The next morning, I hit the bus station. I could have gone anywhere. I chose nowhere. Some town you've never heard of, off a state highway that doesn't show up on the big maps. A place where men still shake hands and no one cares what brand your shoes are. I got a job under the table fixing up docks and doing odd jobs at a local marina. Kept to myself. Ate simply. Slept soundly. For the first time in years, I breathed without a tightness in my chest. I didn't vanish out of fear. I vanished because I wanted to build something without her shadow on it. She thought leaving me in the dark was a joke. She should have known. Men like me build from darkness. And 4 years in the quiet? That's long enough to build a masterpiece. 3 years and 9 months after that night on the road, I was living in a city where no one knew my name, at least not the one my ex-wife used to shout when she was annoyed or needed the Wi-Fi fixed. Around here, they called me Sam. Sam Whitaker. I worked under that name, paid taxes under that name, hell. I even started to respond to it without thinking. It wasn't a disguise. It was a clean slate. Some people run to escape who they are. I ran to become who I should have been all along. I was doing drywall for a crew that handled custom remodels. Good people. Rough around the edges, but honest in a way rich folks never managed to fake. There was dignity in the work. Walls, studs, tools, sweat. We started before dawn, broke for coffee and egg sandwiches at 9:15 sharp, and kept going until our shirts were soaked through and our boots were heavy with sawdust. Every nail I drove in, every panel I hung, I felt steadier. I didn't drink. I didn't party. I read. Economics, real estate, architecture, anything I could get my hands on. A construction foreman once asked why I always had a book in my lunchbox instead of a sandwich. I told him books didn't go stale and knowledge couldn't be stolen. He didn't get it, but he respected it. You'd be surprised how quiet life gets when no one expects anything from you. That kind of silence used to scare me. Now it's where I do my best thinking. I spent those years building muscle and sharpening my mind. Watching. Listening. You learn a lot from being invisible. Especially when you've spent the better part of your life being told you're only valuable in the background. That was my role with Delilah, support staff, and my own marriage. I paid the bills, fixed the leaky pipes, bought the groceries. She chased titles and validation, and I made sure the coffee machine was programmed to wake her up to success. She used to say things like, "You're the rock I stand on, Nate." It sounded sweet at the time, until I realized rocks don't get invited to dinner. They just sit there, useful, unmoving, taken for granted. When she got her big promotion, I cooked her a steak dinner. When I got mine, she asked if it came with a pay raise worth mentioning. If love was measured in applause, I died on a very quiet stage. But not anymore. That past life, it became fuel. I started small, quiet. I took side gigs, repair work, under-the-table handyman jobs. I saved every extra dollar. I lived in a studio the size of a storage unit and drove a truck that coughed more than it purred. I kept my expenses lean and my goals sharp. Then one day, after reading about tax lien certificates of all things, I walked into a county auction with $3,800 in cash and walked out with the rights to a condemned duplex and a paper trail that led to no one. It was a wreck. Mold, rot, rusted out plumbing. But to me, it was opportunity in brick form. I spent weekends fixing it up. Alone. Piece by piece. I knew how to do every part. Wiring, tiling, framing. I worked until my hands went numb and my back screamed for mercy. And when I was done, I had 2 tenants paying cash. They didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer answers. Just like that, Sam Whitaker had a revenue stream. Just like that, I was no longer working for someone else's dream. That was the beginning. The first quiet move on a chessboard that stretched all the way back to that party full of glassy smiles and brittle laughter. I wasn't some broken man hiding out in a rented room. I was a man rebuilding from the studs out. And I hadn't forgotten her. Not for a second. Because some debts aren't financial. Some debts are paid in silence, in patience. And when they're finally due, they come with interest. 2 weeks after she left me on the side of that road, Delilah filed a missing person report. The local news ran a short piece on it. Man vanishes after party, wife concerned. I wasn't surprised. The photo they used was a cropped image of me at her company retreat, standing stiff in a blazer she picked out, holding a paper plate of shrimp cocktail and trying not to look like a hostage. Delilah, of course, had her moment in the spotlight. She stood outside our house in a beige trench coat, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, not a smear in sight on her makeup. Told reporters I'd been under a lot of emotional stress lately. Said I was quiet, withdrawn, and might be in need of help. I watched the clip from the back room of a bait shop 3 states away, eating a turkey sandwich I'd made from the cheapest meat the local grocer had on special. She went on about my fragile mental state, her voice catching in just the right places, the practiced tremble of someone who knew how to perform concern but not how to live it. When the reporter asked if there had been any recent arguments, she did that half-laugh thing, the one where her voice lifted but her eyes went dead. No, she said. Nate's always been sensitive. He took things personally. But I loved him. Sensitive. That's the word you use when you want someone to seem unstable without sounding cruel. It's the emotional version of throwing someone in front of a bus with a gentle push. The police took her statement, sniffed around a little, but I'd made it easy for them to move on. No signs of foul play. No financial distress. A couple of unconfirmed sightings in small towns. One trooper told the local paper, he's an adult. If he doesn't want to be found, we can't force him. They moved on. She didn't. Delilah couldn't resist turning my absence into part of her brand. Within 6 months, she'd posted a long, performative essay on LinkedIn about resilience and grief. Losing someone doesn't mean they died. Sometimes they just disappear. And you have to find a way to honor the love while letting go. There was a photo of us attached. Me holding her hand at our 10th anniversary, cropped just enough to center her diamond and my expressionless face. And then, just like that, she moved on. Her next guy looked like a glossy magazine spread come to life. Gregory Vaughn, CEO of a boutique hedge fund, teeth like piano keys, a jawline that could split granite. The kind of man who never wore the same watch twice. I recognized the type immediately. The kind of man Delilah always described in code. Driven, sophisticated, inspiring. She posted a photo of them at a gala, her in red silk, him in tailored navy, both of them looking like their skin had been airbrushed. The caption was something like, "You never know how life will bring joy back into your world." Joy. She meant money, access, applause. And yet, what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I saw every move she made. I tracked her not like a stalker, but like a man who studies the fault lines before an earthquake. I used proxies, ghost accounts, a fake name tied to a real estate portfolio just 2 degrees away from her fiancé's firm. Every gala, every statement, every champagne-soaked event, I watched. She thought I was gone. Vanished. A ghost in her rearview. But I wasn't gone. I was just quiet. By then, I bought 2 more properties, both through shell buyers, both cash. When I flipped. The other I rented to a pair of tech kids who thought I was just the building's maintenance guy. I set up an LLC, discreetly layered with enough complexity that no one could trace it without a serious forensic accountant. My net worth crossed six figures again. Not bad for a guy who used to sleep in a $29 a night motel. She thought I lost everything. But the truth was, I never had it. Not really. Not until I walked away. She married up. I rose quietly. And I was still rising. Because I didn't just disappear. I became a man she wouldn't recognize. But she would. Soon enough. Revenge, when it's real, isn't loud. It's not a shout or a slap or a drunken voicemail. It's not crashing a party or posting screenshots out of spite. That's theater, loud, messy, and easy to dismiss. The real kind? It's a whisper behind a locked door. It's pressure applied slowly. Just enough to crack the glass, but never make a sound. By year 4, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was networking. Started simple. Construction guys who did side jobs for lawyers and real estate investors. They talked. I listened. Made a habit of showing up early, buying the first round of coffee, fixing what others let slide. You'd be surprised how easy it is to make powerful friends when you keep your mouth shut and your hands busy. Then I met Mia. She worked as an assistant property manager at one of the buildings I had quietly acquired through an LLC. Sharp as glass and twice as dangerous when provoked. We got to talking. Turns out, she used to work in risk assessment for a private security firm until she discovered her boss was cooking the books and left with a fat settlement and a non-disclosure agreement she never honored after 2 glasses of wine. Mia had contacts. Former auditors, forensic accountants, cybersecurity consultants, people who understood the difference between illegal and just barely legal. She introduced me to a guy named Calder, a tech ghost who could scrub an identity clean or pull a year's worth of encrypted emails out of thin air. I never had to ask them to help me. I just laid out a few names. Gregory Vaughn, Delilah Hale. Their faces changed. Gregory, it turned out, had a past. Not a criminal record. He was too careful for that. But there were rumors. SEC whisperings. Backdoor deals that smelled like insider trading but never quite made it to court. And Delilah? She wasn't just arm candy. She sat on a foundation board linked to one of Gregory's investment firms. That was the thread. A supposed nonprofit used to funnel donor funds into shell real estate projects. Money meant for community revitalization ending up in ghost properties, flipped quietly for private profit. Tax breaks claimed. Hands washed clean. Mia and Calder dug deeper. Turns out the foundation filed identical expense reports 2 years in a row. A $75,000 donation listed twice, word for word. That's not just lazy, that's illegal. Someone had gotten comfortable. Careless. The pieces were falling into place. I didn't need to break them. I just needed to show the world who they really were. So I laid the groundwork. Registered a media account. Burner name. Professional graphics. Clean as a whistle. Equity Watch. Looked like a transparency watchdog, complete with sourced articles and just enough buzzwords to sound legitimate. I started leaking breadcrumbs, vague posts about ethical finance, a few well-placed jabs at boutique hedge funds laundering money through development trusts. Within weeks, real journalists started following. Then came the shell company, Tyndall Civic Ventures. Registered in Delaware, naturally. Posed as a new investor interested in backing Gregory's next venture. We staged a chance introduction through one of Mia's contacts at a fundraising event. He took the bait. I watched him shake hands with a man whose name didn't exist on any public registry. The arrogance on his face. That same smirk Delilah wore when she left me on the side of the road. It was almost too easy. I knew where they lived, where they worked, what charities they supported, what consultants they hired to scrub their image. And I knew exactly when their firm was planning to unveil a massive revitalization initiative downtown, complete with a press release, ribbon cutting, and invited media. Perfect. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about exposure. I didn't want to hurt them in secret. I wanted the truth to be undeniable. On record. On camera. I didn't want her to cry. I wanted her to answer questions. And the best part? They still had no idea the man they left behind had learned how to pull strings of his own. I came back into the city on a rainy Thursday. The kind of rain that glosses the streets and makes everything look more expensive than it is, like even the gutters are posing for magazine spreads. For years ago, I left that place in a thrift store flannel and steel-toed boots, walking alone with my hands in my pockets and nothing in my name but a jaw full of grit. I returned with a tailored navy jacket, Italian leather shoes, and a watch I didn't wear for status. I wore it because it was mine, paid for in full, and it kept time the same way I did, quiet, precise, inevitable. I didn't rush it. I came in as someone new. My name was Lucas Kincaid, now an investor, a consultant, a man of discreet means and even more discreet motives. My story was solid, the paperwork cleaner than a priest's Sunday shirt. Mia handled the image. Calder handled the encryption. I handled the long game. The first few weeks were reconnaissance. I took meetings, shook hands, dropped harmless business cards with fake firm names that still held weight. I knew the circles they moved in. I knew the sound of the champagne they ordered. I knew which photographers they tipped and which influencers they fed, just enough information to stay relevant. Gregory Vaughn was exactly the same in person as he was on screen, smug, polished, and convinced the world existed to orbit his jawline. He was launching something big, a clean energy partnership, with a splashy gala and a keynote by a minor celebrity whose agent spelled her name in all caps. And Delilah? She was the same, too, at least on the outside. Still gorgeous, still poised, still wearing power like perfume. But there was a tightness in her eyes now, a deeper hunger, like she'd won everything she ever wanted but hadn't realized it still didn't make her full. I got myself invited to the gala easily enough. A favor pulled here, a recommendation slipped there. Tyndall Civic Ventures was a name with just enough mystery and just enough financial weight to make Gregory's PR team put me on the guest list. They didn't vet me too hard. Big mistake. The gala was in one of those downtown towers with glass walls and curated lighting that makes every drink look like it costs $300. Jazz band. White roses. The kind of setting where people practice their smiles in the mirrored elevator. I stepped inside like I belonged there. No one recognized me. Why would they? The beard was gone. The build was sharper. My hair slicked back, not overgrown. Even my posture had changed. I wasn't hunched or hesitant. I wasn't Nate, the husband who waited in lobbies while his wife networked. I was Lucas now, and I was hunting. I watched her before she saw me. Delilah worked the room like it was her second skin, touching arms, leaning in, laughing just the right amount. Her dress was deep green, expensive, flattering, and just showy enough to say I've arrived without screaming it. Gregory was across the room, mid-interview with some streaming finance channel. I noted the mic flag. I'd already scheduled a correction submission to their open-source tip box. She finally saw me over the rim of her glass. I caught her glance, then turned away like I hadn't noticed. That's the trick to unsettling people. Recognition without acknowledgement. I circled the room once, casually joining a conversation near her. Lucas Kincaid, I said when someone asked. Civic Ventures. We're watching a few of Vaughn's projects with interest. Her gaze snapped to me then. She didn't speak right away. Just studied my face with the kind of half smile that says, "Do I know you?" I met it with the kind of smile that says you'll never figure it out in time. We were introduced formally seconds later. Delilah Hale, she said, offering her hand. I took it. Firm grip. Steady. Cool. A pleasure, I said. I've heard a lot about you. The corners of her eyes tightened, just barely. That tick she used to get when her gut was whispering something her brain didn't want to believe. But she couldn't place me. Not yet. And I didn't give her the chance. We made polite conversation. I let her talk. Let her steer it. Gave just enough information to keep her curious, not enough to give anything away. She asked about my business. I told her we specialized in restructuring failing portfolios. Her eyes flicked. Then she smiled, just a little too wide. Well, she said, raising her glass, maybe we'll have a reason to speak again. I returned the toast, my expression cool. Oh, I said, we absolutely will. Then I walked away, leaving her standing in a room full of people she'd already fooled, while the one man who knew exactly who she was had just shaken her hand and slipped into the crowd. The first piece was placed, and she didn't even realize she was already on the board. I didn't strike all at once. That's not how you bring down a house built on image and illusion. No, you don't swing a hammer. You pull the nails, one at a time, until it collapses under its own weight. It started with whispers. Gregory Vaughn's clean energy initiative lost a key investor 3 weeks after the gala. Quietly. No public statement. Just a simple line in a trade publication. Tyndall Civic Ventures withdraws pending further due diligence. The next week, one of his shell companies, Park and Willow Development Group, got flagged for zoning violations. 2 permits had forged signatures. No one knew how it got reported, but Mia made sure the city clerk had copies of the originals and the forgeries. A junior journalist at a local paper ran the story. Calder boosted it with a swarm of anonymous tips and background threats. It caught. Gregory did what men like him always do: blame someone else, fire a few staff, and smirk his way through the damage. But it wasn't just business. Delilah's world started shrinking from the inside out. At a charity brunch, a donor backed out at the last minute, claimed a conflict of interest. A gala she'd spent 6 months planning was abruptly rescheduled by the venue due to security concerns. One of her foundation's largest checks bounced, not because the money was gone, but because the account had been flagged for irregular activity. And then came the photos. A manila envelope left at the foundation's reception desk. Inside, high-resolution stills of Gregory, late at night, stepping into a hotel on 9th Street with a woman not named Delilah. 2 hours later, he emerged alone, tucking his shirt back in. No note. No threat. Just a single phrase on a sticky note in neat, block handwriting. Some partnerships are more expensive than they look. It didn't explode right away. That's not how rot works. It starts behind the walls. Then you hear the creaking. Then the smell. Then the collapse. Delilah didn't know what was happening, only that things were unraveling. She stopped smiling in photos. Her social media presence thinned. Her posts became vague, defensive quotes about trust, about inner circles, about cutting out toxicity. Paranoia had her. Good. The breaking point came on her birthday. She walked into her office to find a small envelope on her desk. No one saw who left it. No handwriting on the front. Inside was a simple card, cheap cardstock, blank inside, except for 3 words. For your ambitions. It was the same line she wrote to me once. On a $10 Burger King gift card she left on the kitchen counter the morning of my 38th birthday. No one else knew that detail. No one else would have remembered it. But she did. Because when she saw that card, her hands trembled. She left the office early that day. Rumor was she looked pale. Sick. Like someone had walked over her grave. Maybe someone had. I kept the pressure low after that. Let her sit in it. Let the silence stretch just long enough to keep her nerves fraying. A week later, she showed up at a hotel bar downtown, the kind of place we used to go before she stopped pretending to like dive joints. She slid onto the stool next to me without knowing who I was. Her eyes were tired. Her smile cracked. I ordered a drink, neat whiskey with a wedge of lime on the rim. Strange order, I know. She used to tease me about it. Called it cowboy citrus. The bartender set it down, and I saw her freeze just a little. She looked over, almost said something, but I didn't meet her gaze. She stared at the glass like it had whispered her name. Then I stood up, left a tip, and walked out without a word. That night, she made 3 calls. One to Gregory, one to her lawyer, and one to a number she hadn't dialed in years. Mine. She let it ring 6 times before it went to voicemail. I didn't answer, but I sent her a text. Blocked number. No name. Just 3 words. Still watching, Delilah. She asked for the meeting. Her assistant called the number I left in that text. Didn't say much, just that Ms. Hale would appreciate a conversation off record, off the radar. I picked the place, a quiet rooftop bar on the edge of the city. Neutral territory. Not her glass fortress of a high-rise. Not my turf either. Just high enough to see everything she'd built, and just quiet enough to hear it starting to crack. I got there early. She arrived 15 minutes late. Same as always. She stepped off the elevator like she expected to be watched, heels clicking, jaw set, hair perfect. But her eyes were searching. Not for admiration this time. For control. She saw me and stopped. 3 years of distance between us collapsed in a single breath. I was sitting at a corner table, drink already in hand, neat whiskey, lime wedge balanced on the rim. No disguise. No fake name. Just me. Her voice, when it came, was soft. Hollow. Nate. I stood, motioned for her to sit. Didn't smile. Didn't nod. Just looked her in the eye. Yes, I said. Still Nate. But not the one you left on the side of a road. She lowered herself into the chair slowly, like gravity had gotten stronger. She didn't speak right away. Just stared at me like I was a ghost that had somehow aged better than she remembered. You're alive, she finally said. Always was. She blinked. I let the silence hang. You disappeared, she whispered. There was a police report. They thought maybe. You hoped I broke, I said quietly. That I went wandering off into the woods, weeping and lost. That maybe I'd drink myself into the dirt, or disappear into some sad corner of America where no one knew what you did. I leaned forward, placed a folder on the table between us. Brown, thick, neatly labeled. She didn't reach for it. She didn't have to. You were wrong, I said. I didn't break. I rebuilt. I opened the folder. Inside documents. Records. Photos. Screenshots. zoning violations, bank transfers, hotel timestamps, Gregory with his mistress, her name on 2 overlapping donation statements, internal emails, all legal, all timestamped, all real. I know about the shell companies, I said. About the grant money that never made it to the projects. About Gregory's nights at the Hilton and the fake invoices he filed to cover the cost. She reached for the glass of water in front of her but didn't drink. I wasn't broken, I said, my voice steady. I was sharpening the blade. Delilah sat frozen, not crying, not denying, just hollow, like a statue left out in the rain too long. Her voice cracked. You planned this. I lived it, I replied. While you chased cameras and cocktail parties, I built something. Something real. And while you were playing queen in a kingdom of cards, I learned how to pull out the bottom row. She looked down at the folder. I could go to the board, she said weakly. We could talk. There's a way to fix this, Nate. I smiled. Just a little. There's no fixing this. There's only revealing it. I stood, buttoned my coat. The skyline behind her glittered like nothing was wrong. I leaned down, close enough that only she could hear. The final blow's not in that folder, I whispered. It's already scheduled. Check your inbox tomorrow morning. And maybe call Gregory before the market opens. She looked up at me then, really looked, and for the first time since that awful night, I saw her mask fall away. Not rage. Not regret. Just realization. She thought she'd buried me, but I'd been under her feet the whole time. She opened her mouth to say something, maybe to plead, maybe to curse, but I didn't wait. I turned and walked toward the elevator. The doors opened with a soft chime. I stepped inside, not looking back. As the doors slid shut, I saw her still sitting there. Alone. Smaller than I remembered. And finally beginning to understand what I'd known for years. The man she left in the dark had learned how to turn shadows into weapons. They say when it rains, it pours. But when a lie unravels, it doesn't fall, it detonates. By the following week, the media had it. First came the Exposé, an online publication, small but reputable, broke the story on Gregory Vaughn's shell company schemes. They had receipts, timelines, interviews with anonymous insiders. Calder had made sure of that. The forensic trail was clean, but just dirty enough to stick. Delilah's name was buried in the 4th paragraph, co-chair of a charitable foundation under federal review for potential tax fraud. That would have been enough. But then came the second leak. Not from me. Not directly. A journalist dug into the disappearance of one Nathan Hale 4 years ago. She connected the dots, how a respected man vanished after a party hosted by his wife's elite circle, how no foul play was found, and how the wife in question remarried a high-profile hedge fund manager 6 months later. The piece was titled, The Man They Left Behind. And this time, Delilah's name was in the headline. It painted her not just as complicit in Gregory's financial web, but as the cold-hearted socialite who left her husband in the middle of the road as a joke. A prank. An experiment in loyalty, one quote said, attributed to a source at the party. Crocodile tears don't play well in print. The public turned fast. The comment sections exploded. Words like sociopath, cruel, heartless floated to the top. Old friends unfollowed her. Brands quietly removed her name from speaker panels. The foundation's website went offline pending restructuring. Then came Gregory's exit. He issued a statement 2 days later, a cold wall of legalese. I was unaware of certain actions conducted under my name by others within the organization. He dropped her like bad stock. Filed an injunction to separate their finances. Rumor had it, he'd already moved into a different condo, this one with a security gate she no longer had access to. Her fall wasn't loud. It was quiet. Eerie. One moment she was in every tagged photo on Instagram, her smile trademarked and practiced. The next, she was gone. They say she tried calling reporters. No one answered. She gave a statement. I've always tried to act in good faith, but the public had moved on. No one buys sincerity from a woman who once left her husband on a roadside like trash to test his loyalty. Meanwhile, something else was happening, less public, more powerful. A new company was rising. Kincaid Restoration Group. Private, quiet, but growing fast. Real estate, construction, asset recovery. A mix of blue-collar backbone and white-collar precision. Word on the street was, their founder was some former consultant who'd kept a low profile and built from scratch. Investors were whispering. Competitors were worried. They didn't know it was me. They didn't need to. I didn't need cameras. I didn't need a spotlight. I had what I came for. Freedom. Vindication. and a seat at a table I built with my own hands. Delilah, meanwhile, was drowning in silence. Last I heard, she'd moved into a rental condo in the outskirts, her savings tied up in legal fees and frozen assets. Gregory's lawyers weren't gentle. Her foundation folded. Her so-called friends stopped inviting her anywhere that required a step-and-repeat photo. She was no longer feared, no longer admired. She was alone, mocked, forgotten. And somewhere out there, I imagine she sits by her window at night, staring out at a city that no longer cares. Viewers, this is the end of the story. We would be very grateful for your likes, comments, subscriptions, and sharing of our stories. See you next time.